Hey guys, just a quick weekend video. A viewer asked about SPCE. I mentioned it in Friday's market close video. So today I just want to talk through how I'm structuring a trade on this, and hopefully you can take something away from the way that I structure these trades. So before I do that, let's actually talk about what is going on, because this isn't just a proxy for the SpaceX IPO. And I mentioned that in the other video that I did, that you can't just be trading all of the space stocks because SpaceX is going to IPO. That's not exactly what's going on in the sector. There is a lot of that, and I think retail investors are doing that. But let's talk about what's going on here. So SPCE didn't just break out on Friday. It absolutely skyrocketed. And so the stock exploded 36.4%, 42% really, on Friday alone, closing at $6 and we're to close 18. So pretty high in a massive volume, 178 million shares. So it's a violent move, and it was triggered kind of by a perfect storm of major operational announcements, a legal resolution, and an aggressive short squeeze. I mean, you could see that's what's going on here. I also had mentioned a Wyckoff accumulation phase ending and breaking out on a sign of strength here. So that's actually not that different sometimes than how a short squeeze looks, and often they occur at the same time. But so let's talk about what those catalysts were. So the VSS Unity took to the skies. Before the market opened on Friday, Virgin Galactic announced that its legacy spacecraft, the VSS Unity, officially returned to flight operations at Spaceport America in New Mexico, completing its first new glide flight, and so while the market knows Virgin Galactic is moving away from the Unity to focus on its next generation Delta class ships, management framed these Unity flights as a critical real world proxy to train pilots, ground crews, and mission control. So it provided the market essentially, with proof that they are de-risking the operational parameters and they're actively testing. So that was a really great sign. I think that's what the catalyst was, more than the SpaceX IPO, because look, this hasn't been doing that when all the other stocks have been doing it. So you have to think about why this is doing what it's doing now, even though it's in the same sector. So then the other thing that happened is in the same announcement about the VSS Unity, the company firmly reiterated its timeline for the highly anticipated Delta class spaceships, which I was just talking about. They announced Q3 2026 and Q4 2026 guidance. So because the stock's entire survival kind of hinges on that Delta ship hitting the goals, seeing a tangible flight operation resume gave a lot of investors a massive shot of optimism, and that's why you saw this volume finally come in here. Again, probably the institutional players accumulating shares, because this type of activity is intense. And so there was also a legal dark cloud that finally cleared. So I had to dig through for this one, but buried in the news was a secondary highly positive corporate catalyst. The U.S. District Court gave preliminary approval to settle longstanding shareholder derivative lawsuits against the company. So not only are the legal claims being swept away, but Virgin Galactic's insurance companies are paying out a $2.75 million settlement, half of which Virgin Galactic gets to keep. And for a company keeping an eye on its cash burn, resolving a legal overhang, and gaining it's tiny for them, but gaining a cash injection is double win. So, and then the fuel, this short squeeze that I'm talking about. So SPCE entered last week with a massive short interest. So I looked it up, it was like over 20%. And when the operational news dropped pre-market, the stock opened up higher. And so momentum buyers and retail traders piled in, and then price surged past that key technical resistance level, about $5. There was another one here at $3 something I was looking at, but you can see right here, 460, something like that. Depending on what time frame you're looking at, there's another one here at 450. So just basically resistance after resistance, it blew through. So for the trade, it just means, there's going to be a lot of option premium being jacked up because we just had a short squeeze. But it also confirms the momentum is real. So I do like this as a trade. So how am I going to play it and how I'm going to structure it was a question actually the viewer asked. And so I like to play stuff like this where I've missed the big move, because I wasn't keeping an eye on this stock really, but it is a great, again, for me, a Wyckoff accumulation, just months of accumulation, followed by that little spring down and then a blast back up. So to me, that's like textbook, but I would have liked to get in somewhere earlier. And I would have done that with shares because this took months to do, or even years. I think I looked at this on the weekly not too long ago. And in fact, okay, so about a year ago, we had some final dramatic downside. So, but now we're coming back to life here. So the way I would play this, because actually on the weekly, it's not as big of a breakout as the daily insists. I mean, it's huge, guys, but I would have liked to see a bit more, maybe 2 candles, but that would have been, a month. So maybe one more candle will confirm it, but I don't want to miss out on this. So the way that I am going to structure this is twofold. I'm going to go in with a small position of shares. So I generally do 100 shares of most trades because then I can do things in the option market based on that. But sometimes for something like this, I'll just buy 50 shares just as like a probe, if you will. But when we look at the options market here, let me go back to the daily. So if you're using Thinkorswim, there's a study I have down on here, and you can look this up in other places as well, but the IV rank is very high. This is some of the most volatile it's been in a very long time. And so to me, that says that the options premiums are jacked up. So if we go ahead and we look at the options chain, I'm going to be seeing that we're at 216% implied volatility. So it's very high. Again, I wouldn't have known if that's high for this stock unless I had looked at the study down here to see. And it does go through times of elevated IV for sure. And then it kind of chops around for a while, for a long time, like we said. But this is something to look at, see how it's moved previously, because we can hit some pretty high IV, but this is broken above multi-year highs. Multi-year lows, well, multi-year resistance, really. Anyway, the IV is jacked up. So to me, that's the more interesting part. So I'm not going to be buying calls. That's not something I'm going to do here. I could buy spreads for sure, maybe buy the at the money because there's a lot of open interest, or maybe slightly under at the 5. That's not a lot of capital, but the IV is still jacked up even for a 1 year out, a leap on that. So what I would be doing is I would be buying a spread. So maybe buy the 5 and sell the 10. Let's see what we're getting for that. So it's 94 cents and upside is 406. So it's a pretty good situation there. I can make 3 times money. You're putting down 94, getting 400 minus the 94 that you put down. So that's pretty good. I'm thinking about it, but what I'd actually like to do on this is to sell premium. And so I have a program over here. You guys can look this stuff up too, but I've coded my own. But essentially, if you have GEX data, let's look and see what's going on with the market makers here. So basically, I want to see what strikes have a lot of positive gamma. And you could see that we're way past the gamma flip line, which is right here at $3, meaning we're in positive GEX when we're above that. And these two are the same because there's not that many options. So the last one for the month is the last one for the week, but that's a lot of options right now. I could look for some different expirations and compare them. For example, if we want to see the one that ends on 6/18 and then 7/17, let's refresh the charts here. And then the bottom one is total GEX. Okay, cool. So that's a little more helpful. It looks to me, so here's how I would be interpreting this information. We have a nice call wall down at 5. So that's kind of the first target I would go for entering my shares. So I might be looking to get 50 shares at 5.5, $5.50, and another 50 shares down at $5 because that's when we'll be hitting. At the point at which we hit $5, let me put a little alert here at 5. The point at which we hit $5, I'm going to start selling cash secured puts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the GEX here, and I see that $3 is a pretty strong, it's the support line, the GEX flip line, but this was for 6/18. Okay, so for the next month or so, or 2 weeks, we have a pretty good target at $3 holding, and $3 was way down here below a few resistance points that we already pointed out on different time frames. I just have some auto resistance lines drawing here, but if we go back to the weekly and we kind of look at where people have been accumulating this. It's basically between the $5 and the $2 range. So $3 is not a bad target for me because this is where we were before any of the SpaceX information started happening and retail was looking for new trades to get in. So I'm comfortable picking up shares at $3, me personally. Again, not financial advice. Do what you will. Do your own research, please. This is my research. And so at this point, I'd be going over and probably looking for 47 days out, because of how much premium I can get. I can get $11 premium on the $3, which is not bad. But if I go further out, it's still very close in IV. So I'd probably sell 4 or 5 of these, maybe even 10 of them. So I'm collecting $25 per option that I write. 10 of them would be $250, and that will afford me 100 shares of them as well, basically, if it ever drops there. So I'd be looking to do that. And I also don't think it'll drop that low, pending some crazy news. The only issue that happens a lot of times with these is that, and this happened to me I was looking on MNTS, and I wanted to get in overnight. Couldn't back here. We talked about this in another video. I had a buy order down here on one of the pivot points. I could do a video explaining that. So leave a message. Somebody had mentioned they would love to see how I'm using Thinkorswim and the technicals I'm using, the indicators, my general setup and everything. And pivot points are huge, absolutely huge. But anyway, my point here was I couldn't even get into MNTS, and the same could definitely happen for SPCE as it's starting to take off on its own, and I don't like chasing. So if I don't get filled here, I don't get filled here. But part of it is the exercise of doing this. So, I had also mentioned that I put these as trade tickets. And if you guys don't know what that is, I use a program called Alpha Harmonic Trade OS. It used to be a proprietary program, but now it's a full website. So you can go to alphaharmonic.io to look into it if you're interested. But basically, I write out my thesis here. And, the thesis is that it's a SpaceX IPO sympathy, and it's also a Wyckoff sign of strength or show of strength hybrid ticket. So meaning I've done technical analysis here, and I also have sentiment analysis that I agree with. And so I have a one-line thesis, how I frame it, and basically what my current decision is. I wrote this before today, but plan an initial 50 shares. I'm actually thinking plan an initial 100 share starter and then 3 CSPs down below. But I think we're probably going to do 10 the more I look at it, especially looking at the GEX there. And then, you want to start planning out how much capital, in this particular account I'm trading, I'd want this to be a very small position. So for me, about $5,000 makes a lot of sense. And then I'd start looking at take profits. And this is a hard one with something like this, because we don't have a lot of near-term resistance. I mean, the last resistance, I'm going to have to probably go to the weekly or the monthly to find this, and the GEX wasn't too helpful, but it does look like maybe right around $7.50, which I think I indicated before here. Okay, so if it breaks and holds above 750, I might consider scaling in as opposed to a take profit, because it means that it has left all of these months of people and traders down here, and or that was their good entry, so they have no reason necessarily to reconsider it until it comes back down. So, and these are really strong hands down here. These aren't retail buying at everything. This is somebody accumulating for a very long time, willing to pay those prices for it. And I think that's actually a great thing. So I'd be looking to get in deeper at 7.5. I'd probably start moving up my covered cash secured puts. And if you don't understand what that is, please leave a message, but I'm assuming most of you know how cash secured puts work. But I'll be selling a bunch of these options, collecting the premium here. And if the price never reaches that, I'll be able to keep the premium. If the price reaches that, I keep the premium, and then I buy 100 shares at that strike price. And then I'll probably sell covered calls above the current price to collect premium until they get called away from me, unless I truly believe in it. But something as volatile as this, playing the premium game, is very nice. But like I said, I like to also accumulate 100 shares. You would call it a ratio strategy, in the sense that I have more shares than the number of calls I'm selling, but we're not selling calls quite yet. So that's all good. But I probably, go with 100 shares in the relative near term if we pull back down to 5. If we don't, I'm probably going to miss the trade, and maybe I'll just sell some cash secured puts below the market. So anyway, I started planning that out, and my first take profit probably would be at 7.5 just because of what I said. Also, I'd probably scale in there too. And the reason that makes sense is what I'm saying is I will cut my cash secured puts. So I have a strategy for that. I could do a video about how I manage cash secured puts, but essentially once this loses enough of its value, it's no longer worth me holding it and risking the chance that the price might drop after this initial catalyst. I tend to take profits very fast on cash secured puts, especially something as volatile as this. But anyway, if you want more tutorials on how to actually use a trade ticket workflow where you're planning this out, because the reason I'm doing this is so on Monday morning, let me save my changes. I can just go and look at my planned tickets. In fact, if I go to status here and I just go to planned, now the only trades I see here, and if we go to the dashboard, I could do the same thing and do a filter there. Dashboard is just showing me all the current tickets that I have. And let's just go to status and planned and let it reload. So Monday morning, right, tomorrow, I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, what are my planned trades? And I'll know exactly what it is because I just planned it out. And if I don't know, I can click into it and see what my game plan was. And my game plan is very simple right here. Sometimes I write the actual full game plan right here, so I don't need any of these fields. But if you're trading professionally or with other people, you probably want to build out the full ticket. But the summary is plenty good. You could just write it out, and some people don't even like using the full summary. They just like using this as a way to log their trade. Put everything here, not follow it deeply, but I like to put, what my bias is, how much conviction I have, that kind of thing, sectors, what percentage of my portfolio. Again, I don't want to spend the whole time on this because this video is getting long and you're probably here for the analysis on the tickers. But if you're not, leave a comment below. But my analysis on this ticker is a true change of character. Also, I have the super trend study on here that I built out custom for Thinkorswim, and we've finally broken out. That doesn't mean it's going to hold because it's on the weekly. So the weekly has to, actually the weekly did close. Okay. So yeah, I'm feeling even more bullish about this, but I do think we're going to have maybe a little bit of a pullback to 5 at some point, and I'm willing to wait for that. So yeah, happy trading, guys. Sorry this is such a quick one. It's Sunday. I have some family over. Come back tomorrow after the market. I'll be doing a longer one, a rundown of the market, and we can actually check in on this trade and see how it goes. I'll let you know if I entered personally. Again, it depends a lot on what happens, but if this blasts first thing in the morning, I'm probably not going to be reporting that I traded it. But yeah, we'll catch back here. Thanks again for all the comments, everybody. I really appreciate it. Let me know other things. I have a Thinkorswim video coming out that I'm starting to plan. And tomorrow I'm going to do the, end of the market recap. So thanks for watching.